tonight a grim milestone, 100 days since the October 7th attack that triggered the Israel-Hamas war.
We don't want the world to forget. We want them to come home. And we want them to come home now.
As long as people are dying and as long as people aren't being given their basic human rights, we're not going to stop disrupting.
We'll take you to a number of vigils and rallies across the GTA and around the world. Plus,
Ford government made a deliberate policy choice in 2019 to remove almost $2 billion in revenue.
sounding the alarm, nearly half of Ontario universities are running deficits, while experts say that could lead to cuts of critical student services.
It's already so expensive as it is in Toronto, so this is just making it even more unaffordable for everyone.
What Toronto's proposed double-digit property tax hike could mean for homeowners and renters.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Thanks for joining us. People across the GTA and around the world coming together today, marking 100 days since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Patrick Swadden is tracking our top story tonight. He has more on today's demonstrations.
Hundreds marched down Yonge Street today, showing solidarity with the people of Gaza. Bassel Abdelkader inspired that after over 300 rallies in Toronto, demonstrators are still showing up.
As long as people are dying and as long as people aren't being given their basic human rights, we're not going to stop disrupting and making our voices heard.
Over 23,000 Palestinians have been killed at the hands of Israel.
Dalia Awad says the crisis in Gaza was human-made and needs human intervention to end.
That includes an arms embargo, an immediate ceasefire, and a lifting of the siege.
Awad says Canada hasn't done enough to stop the bloodshed.
The government is failing to listen to what the people of Canada want.
And for some, that includes supporting South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice, accusing the Israeli government of committing genocidal acts. Trudeau said Friday he supports the ICJ.
But our wholehearted support of the IGA and its processes does not mean that we support the premise of the case brought forward by South Africa.
The case itself will take many years to resolve, but in the meantime, there's going to be more and more Palestinians dying, so our priority is to have that come to an end as soon as possible.
And for Abdelkader, that means continuing to protest, while across town, another rally taking place.
The world needs to care about these people.
Hundreds gathered to demand the release of hostages still in Gaza.
We all are just hoping that they are still alive.
Today is the 100th day, and there are men, there are women, there are children, there are the elderly, there are babies, and we don't want the world to forget.
Avi Atali helped organize the vigil. He says he recently visited Israel.
You walk the street, you can feel the sadness in the streets.
Even half a world away, with thousands dead, the voices here at home just as loud as 100 days ago. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
Tonight in Toronto, hundreds of community members joining together at a vigil. They're calling for the immediate release of hostages, and they're also honoring those who were killed in the October 7th Hamas attack.
The waiting, the unknown, the inaction is unbearable. We need the hostages to come home now.
Family members of hostages still in Gaza sharing their stories. CBC spoke this weekend with a Toronto woman about her family's grueling experience losing an aunt and having a cousin still being held by Hamas. She says it has been 100 days of war, but the time for hostages has run out.
You know, this number is unimaginable. We didn't even think it's going to go to the third day. For us, it's still October 7. It hasn't stopped, it haven't moved, the clock haven't moved. It's just going backward because all of the hostages, time ran out. It's not running out, it ran out. My aunt, Kinneret, was murdered on October 7. Her husband, my uncle, doesn't even know how to continue without a woman that he loved so deeply and that never separated for one day, actually, in their life. And that my cousin, his daughter, Carmel, got still being held. The whole world need to understand that this is humanitarian crisis. This is not a war.
Meantime, there was heavy fighting in southern and central Gaza today. A Hamas armed wing spokesman warned the fate of some Israeli hostages was now unknown, rejecting any talks before a ceasefire. Israeli forces released new video of operations. Today's fighting included gun battles, tank fire, and airstrikes. For a third day, communications and internet service were down, complicating emergency response. And at the Israel-Lebanon border, Israeli forces say they killed a small group of armed militants. They also say Hezbollah launched anti-tank missiles, killing 2 Israeli civilians. Well, turning to some other stories tonight, Toronto police and Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment say they're investigating an incident at a Leafs game. This video shared on social media shows a guard holding a person on the ground and kneeling them in the face and head. He then holds the person's face down in a splatter of blood. The Leafs organization said it is cooperating with a police investigation. Now, police did not confirm the video, but did say they made an arrest in relation to an assault. Well, after the stormy, snowy weather Friday, the big chill is here. Pretty cold out there today. People bundled up as they took in some sunshine near Lake Ontario. It'll be even cooler tomorrow, though. When you wake up, expect it to feel in the -20s with the wind chill. Toronto's warming centers are open. The spaces offer those experiencing homelessness a safe place to escape the cold. Meals are provided, and people can also get referrals to emergency shelters. Well, much colder across Western Canada today. People were being warned frostbite was possible within minutes. In Calgary, the wind chill was expected to hit -40 and even colder in other places. Dense ice fog could develop for a second straight night. Busy weekend for Sophia there. We're also hearing about a cold weather alert in Hamilton. Really cold temperatures.
Yeah, and these cold temperatures will be with us for the long haul. It could be worse, though. Have a look at Monday morning in parts of Alberta. Temperatures with the wind chill that feel into the mid-50s. And we've even, in our prairie provinces, had core temperatures below -50, feeling like -60. And we are the recipient of all this cool air from the prairies. It's actually coming from our south and from our west around Lake Michigan, which is why Windsor, you will be cooler on Monday than places like Timmins and Sudbury. -14 for your high in Windsor for Monday. That's 13 degrees below your normal seasonal average. Now play this little game with me. We've got cold air moving across the unfrozen Great Lakes. You know what this recipe spells? Well, the lake effect snow machine, it has been in full force for the past 24 hours. It will continue to fire up all throughout Monday as the lakes are, yes, moderating some of the temperatures. So you will be warmer in places like Owen Sound and Parry Sound as opposed to Windsor and London. But you will also be the recipient of potent lake effect squalls that can still be dropping snowfall at a rate of 3 to 5 centimeters an hour. I'll tell you some of the hardest hit spots in the Long Range, and we'll detail the long range of these cool temperatures. And again, Monday morning, feeling like -20.
Ouch. Okay. Thanks, Sophia. Nearly half of Ontario universities are running deficits. That's according to an organization that represents nearly 24 colleges and universities. As Clara Pasica shows us, the group fears some schools could be close to collapse.
Tens of millions of dollars short. With nearly half of Ontario universities facing a deficit, the Council of Ontario Universities sounded the alarm earlier this week.
We estimate that at least 10 universities are currently projecting operating deficits this year, in 23-24, totaling $175 million.
Orsini says the budget pressures are already forcing cuts to student supports and services.
Universities need the investments necessary to maintain and enhance the programs and services that are vital to students.
The University of Waterloo told CBC News it's short $15 million this year, thanks to a tuition and grant freeze as well as inflation. It's calling for, quote, clear and transformative change to the way schools are funded. The NDP critic says the Ford government should have seen this coming.
The Ford government made a deliberate policy choice in 2019 to remove almost $2 billion in revenue from colleges and universities by implementing a tuition cut and a tuition freeze, which was much needed at the time, but they didn't do anything to replace that revenue loss.
The government appointed an expert panel to come up with a plan to tackle the issue. The universities now want the government to put that plan into action. Among the recommendations, boosting operating grants by 10% this year and allowing tuition increases of 5% this fall. Ontario's Minister of Colleges and Universities, Jill Dunlop, could not accommodate an interview request from CBC or Radio-Canada. But in November, the minister said the government was looking to ensure schools could operate as efficiently as possible before considering fee hikes for students. This week, a spokesperson for the ministry said that the government is carefully reviewing the expert panel's recommendations. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Big change is coming to Mississauga. For the first time in a decade, the city will soon have a new mayor. While we still don't know who is formally on the ballot, residents say there are a number of issues to tackle.
Tackling congestion in the city, taxes, supporting businesses, small businesses.
Keeping property taxes at an acceptable level is important to me.
Initiatives relating to the community and getting more community involvement.
The race is not underway just yet, but council is expected to declare outgoing Mayor Bonnie Crombie's seat vacant on Wednesday. A handful of her fellow councillors have said they're interested in the city's top job and gave us some hints about their approach.
Building what I feel is the most incredible city we have and do it with a practical approach.
Affordability, that's top of mind, community safety and livability.
So far, there's no official date for the by-election. The next generation of Canada's National Ballet School was taking a leap at their dreams today, showing off their talent at the school's first round of auditions.
Always had a love of ballet. I would always go to my ballet classes and I would always be so eager to dance, and it was always the best part of my day.
Today, Canada's National Ballet School is hosting auditions. We ask people to challenge themselves to show us maybe something new, maybe some things that they've been practicing a lot with their teacher, because movement is about communication and it's about a joy of expression. It's about telling a little bit about who we are and who we want to be. So we really try to center our auditions on the joy of movement, the power of storytelling, and the connection that dance has in all of our lives.
This audition has just been amazing. It's getting me out of my comfort zone, and getting in would just be the next step in my ballet training. I will always be so grateful if they accept me, and if Canada just has a national plate in my heart.
Big news this week, the City of Toronto's budget chief warning residents about a potentially substantial property tax increase for the average home. It could amount to about $300 more per year. It is not a done deal yet. The budget process continues for the next month. Toronto City Hall reporter Sean Jeffords has been following the potential property hike all week. He joins me now to talk more about it. I feel like, Sean, people still have a bit of a sticker shock because it's like, my rent is expensive, my mortgage, gas. Life in Toronto feels more expensive than ever. Now I kind of have to deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't blame anyone for feeling that way. 10.5% property tax increase, if it's passed, and it is still proposed right now, will be the single highest property tax increase since amalgamation in 1999.
And it's not just 10%. There's potential here for it to be even higher.
That's right. So you've got the property tax increase, but then you've also got this federal impact levy. That's what the budget chief, Shelley Carroll, is calling it. And this is all about funds that the city is trying to get out of the federal government to support shelters for refugees and asylum seekers. You know, that's a 6% levy And what they're saying is if the federal government doesn't come up with that money, taxpayers will have to pay that, and it will be assessed on the property tax bill. So combined, you're talking about a potential 16.5% property tax increase, which is huge.
It is huge. There is a bit of a deadline for that, right? Like we should get an answer soonish?
That's right. Shelley Carroll says she needs to hear back from the federal government by January 26th to avoid putting that 6% levy onto property taxpayers.
So in addition to the sticker shock, I think a lot of the response we've been hearing from people is, I do kind of get it, because you look around and you see city services, there's a lot of areas that are struggling, that are challenged right now. So people do understand something's got to be done.
That's what Mayor Olivia Chow has been saying since she ran in the by-election campaign in the spring, that we've got to have a tax increase to help fund city services. And she said that in my year-end interview with her about 3 weeks ago, just saying, look, we've got to fix up our park washrooms, our garbage bins, we have to improve service in the TTC. And that's what she's been saying over the last few days about the need for a property tax increase. So there is that acknowledgement that this will pay for that, but that's not the whole story, right? Mm-hmm. The city has a $1.8 billion deficit, and that's kind of springing from COVID-related expenses, fees that have been accruing over years. These were life-saving services during the pandemic, and they've carried forward. They've had an impact. The province, the federal government has stepped up in the past to help relieve those pressures. Not so much anymore, and that's going to be rolled into the budget moving forward.
I know we hear property tax increase, we think of homeowners, condo owners, but you've been getting some questions about potential impact for renters, so this could trickle down.
I think that's a natural question, and the assumption I think a lot of people make is that, well, you only pay property taxes if you own a home in the city, and the reality is that those increases are passed on. If you're a landlord and you get a property tax bill, you generally are going to probably increase the rent for the people who are paying that. And there is some concern at the city that this particular tax increase might give rise or cause for some property owners to raise rent above rent controlled guidelines. Essentially, there's a clause in the legislation that would allow them to apply to the Landlord Tribunal Board to do that. There are a lot of factors at play here, but it's something to watch over the next number of weeks. It'll be a prominent part of the debate, I think.
Right. You said it this week. This is far from a done deal. This is only the beginning of the budget process. So tell us about what happens next.
There's a lot of process involved. So we'll start with telephone town halls and budget review meetings at City Hall this week. Then there will be in-person consultations at civic centers across the city where people can show up and weigh in, tell the politicians what they think, essentially. Then on February 1st, this budget becomes Mayor Olivia Chow's budget, kind of officially. It's a city staff proposal right now. No doubt she has helped shape it, but it'll become her budget, and then she'll present that and that property tax increase in that document to City Council, who will have the final vote on Valentine's Day.
Okay, so if you're perhaps feeling a little cynical, like, what does it matter? You know, this is a time, you know, if you're going to complain, well, maybe do your research and weigh in if you can.
You know, and there's a lot of opportunity for people to do that through those telephone town halls or through these in-person sessions. And, you know, I think that should not be discounted. There is a chance here to change the process, to shift it, to suggest cuts, to suggest budget increases if that's what you want. You know, I think the process is designed so that there is a level of input here and public feedback that can be taken into account.
Okay, thanks, Sean. We appreciate you watching it all for us. I'm sure we're going to be speaking again soon.
Lots more to do.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Shannon.
Downsview Airport will soon undergo a major transformation, but before the airfield becomes a new community, the hangar is offering up some winter fun.
People can, you know, rediscover this site that has been fenced off with barbed wire fences for many years. Well, they built airplanes here, and, you know, now it's the chance for people to come back and discover this great place.
Whether you are a seasoned skater or new to the ice, the rink will welcome those willing to brave the cold, offering skating lessons and DJ nights on weekends until March 17th. Downsview Airport will shut down its air operations later this year, kicking off a 30-year project that will transform hangars and the runway into a new community in North York for housing, culture, and recreation. Time to take a trip down memory lane. Where were you on this day 25 years ago? That's when Toronto, much to the amusement of some Canadians coast to coast, called in the Army to help dig out after a snowstorm.
Tonight, the Army moves in. Another blizzard hits southern Ontario, and Toronto just can't cope. It might have people across this country shaking their heads, even rolling their eyes. Toronto's losing battle with winter this year.
You may remember that guy, of course, CBC's former top anchor, Peter Mansbridge. This video is from our CBC archives, January 14th, 1999. Then Toronto Mayor Mel Lastman notoriously called in the Canadian Armed Forces after the city was blasted by not one but 3 back-to-back snowstorms, totaling more than 100 centimeters of snow. Sophia joining us now as a Winnipegger living in Winnipeg at the time. I did find that a little funny, I will admit, but now living here, I get it.
Yeah, it was old hat for you, but a big deal for people in the big smoke. I remember it like it was yesterday. Now, we won't have 100 centimeters of snowfall, but by the time we get through Tuesday, some of you will definitely have gotten more than 50, well, which is quite a bit. These are additional amounts on top of what you've already received in some areas today and yesterday. You've probably already got 20 to 30 centimeters in some of these hardest hit areas. With these squalls we're talking about, still another 20 to 30 to come. You do the math there. Some of these squalls have been so potent, they've traveled all the way from the Huron shores, the 500 kilometers over the 401 to the Ottawa region. Remember, this is cold Arctic air over those unfrozen lake waters, and we are getting quite a taste of that Arctic air. Feeling like minus 23 in the city of Toronto when you wake up tomorrow and head to school and work. Feeling like minus 25 in Timmins and feeling like minus 20 in the Ottawa region. These persistent winds not only have been bringing in squalls, they will also bring in our next system Tuesday morning with a little bit of extra added oomph with some lake effect. We will have another couple centimeters of snowfall in the downtown core. Really cold week ahead. Lows into the mid-minus teens. Good for all the snowmobilers and anybody that's got a backyard rink and, dare I say, maybe even the opening of the Rideau Canal. But stay warm, Shannon.
Yeah, fingers crossed it opens this year. Thanks so much, Sophia. That's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next weekend. And stay warm.